Hey everyone, welcome back to video number 5. If you haven't watched some of the earlier videos, you should do that. It will help you get ready for this one, and it will also help you see this isn't a normal devotion that you just watch through. You're going to pause, you're going to read together with the people you're watching with, discuss some things, do an activity, or grab some stuff around your house. This video is going to be sponsored by Ozark. Not really, but if they wanted to give me some money, I'm not going to turn it down. Or a degree, you know. Anyway, we're going to talk about some heavy stuff today. So if you're not ready to talk about things like sexuality and marriage and divorce, then this probably isn't the video for you. And if you are, then let's do that. So here's the first question to pause and talk about. I know things like this are super awkward to talk about. Whether you're the parent, whether you're the child, it can be really awkward. So here's your question. Even though things might get awkward, why do you think this is something important to talk about? There's a lot that we could talk about with this topic. So instead of trying to address everything about lust and sexuality or divorce, I just want to cover 3 thoughts with you and really stick close to the scripture and what Jesus is going through here in Matthew 5. So what I'm going to ask you to do here is pause, and you're going to read 2 scriptures together. I'm going to have you read Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 through 32, and then also read Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. Did you notice some similar language in those 2 verses? Both of them have a lot to say about the heart. Now, when you think of heart, you might think of emotions or feeling, love, stuff like that. Back in the context of Jewish day, the heart wasn't associated with emotions so much. That was more of your gut. The heart was like the decision maker of your life. So if your gut or your mind could speak to your heart, then it might influence what you'd actually do, because again, the heart was your decision maker. So what Jesus tells us to do, and what we see in the Proverbs, is that it's very important to protect what speaks to your heart. Some of the main things that speak to our heart would be our eyes, what we see. Sometimes what we see changes what we're going to do. In our ears, what we hear, whether it's from a person or a song. Either way, the scripture is very clear about the importance of protecting and guarding your heart. Jesus goes so far to say that, listen, if your eye causes you to sin, your eye is speaking lust to your heart, cut it out. Now, he's using something called hyperbole, which is exaggeration. He's going a lot farther than what we actually need to do, but he does that for a reason, to prove a point. It's really, really important that we protect and guard our hearts. So here's what I want you to do. Pause in a moment and talk about this question, and then you're going to grab something. So first of all, pause to talk about and answer this question. What are some simple ways you can guard your heart? Whether it's from lust, whether it's any kind of danger, what are some simple ways you can guard your heart? Then you'll pause and go grab a pen and some paper or something that you can write with. Go ahead and do those things. Jesus continues to speak about sexuality as he talks about marriage and divorce. Now, in Jesus' culture, there were 2 views on why someone should be able to get divorced. And those 2 views were based on 2 different interpretations of Deuteronomy 24, verse 1. If you want to pause here and go back to read that scripture, that could be helpful. I'm not going to read it for you, but again, you can find that in Deuteronomy 24, verse 1. Now, the language in question was that someone could write another person a certificate of divorce, thus divorcing them, for any kind of indecency or displeasing thing. So one school of thought in Jesus' day took that to mean literally anything that was displeasing, even something as silly as burning dinner on accident. That could lead to divorce. The second school of thought was that this language of displeasing and indecency was never to be associated with something so small like a burnt dinner, but really was just a reference to something big like marital unfaithfulness, or what Jesus just talked about, adultery. So Jesus associates these 2 things together. So he talks about lust and adultery, and then marriage and divorce. Jesus would have held on to that second school of thought, where he would have made exceptions for legal divorce, but only with something big like marital infidelity, adultery. The certificate of divorce idea, that's not something I'm going to go into, but it really was meant to be a protection for the woman, so she wouldn't be thought of as this like runaway harlot. And it was to show that she was divorced legally and not just sent away for any reason, although, again, some of the people abused those certificates to send their wives away for any reason. But here's what I'd like you to do, because marriage is so important. So I don't want to focus on divorce here as much as a healthy marriage. You're going to take that pen and paper from earlier, and you'll pause the video in a moment. Take that pen and paper, and children, kids that are watching, what I want you to do, if you're not married, is to write down 5 of the top qualities that you would look for in your future spouse. Now, parents, whether you're married or not, what I'd like you to do is write down 5 qualities that you would look for in a spouse, or if you are married, 5 qualities that you really appreciate about your spouse and that helps your marriage be as healthy as it is. I hope that activity was fun and led to some good conversation. If it hasn't, we're going to do that in a second. I remember hearing that activity. It was given to some high school students years ago, and we talked about that at our youth group. And the thing I was surprised, maybe I shouldn't have been, but the thing I was surprised about was how much emphasis, not just 1 or 2, but all the students put on how attractive their potential spouse would be, and how little emphasis they gave to the character of that person, that they would be someone who's honest, trustworthy. So if you haven't already, I want you to pause and talk about this. Why did you choose the 5 qualities that you chose? As we start to wrap things up for this video, I want to just go back and highlight what we're talking about, what I want to leave you with. The first really big idea, again, is it's so important to guard and protect your heart. That is so crucial. And the second is, I don't want to just focus on something like divorce, but instead we want to focus on what leads to a healthy marriage. And the answer to that is not just a person's looks, or even so much the character that they have when you're deciding if you're going to marry them or not, but character and their ability to want to follow God is so important in a healthy marriage. Now, here's the third thing I want to leave you with. Jesus teaches here that our sexuality is so sacred. It's holy. It's important. He doesn't play around when he talks about lust, because he knows what that can lead to. He brings up adultery. He doesn't play around with that because he knows the pain that adultery can cause. He doesn't play around when he talks about divorce because he knows the pain that can cause. And what I want you to see and hear from this is that Christianity doesn't just speak to the things you do or don't believe about God. Christianity doesn't just speak to what you do with your Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights or a week out of the year when you go on a mission trip. Christianity speaks to the most important areas of your life, and one of those areas is your sexuality and who you choose to marry and spend your life with. And those things are very sacred. So here's what I'd like us to do. Listen to what Jesus says about them and then follow him in that. Let's wrap up by praying for each other. And like always, you can ask how you can pray for each other, but I'd also ask you to pray specifically that you would have your heart on the ways of God. Whether it's with not having lust in your heart or a number of other things, but that you would set your heart on following God. And here's the challenge, and this is going to be a tough one, but it's for parents and your kids. Here's the challenge. I would challenge you to have open lines of communication so that whenever you have questions, children, teens, whenever you have questions about sexuality or lust or you have issues with that, I want you to have an open line of communication that it is always okay and it is encouraged to talk to your parents about that. And parents, that you would be ready and willing to listen. You may need to offer some correction sometimes, but that you would always listen first. That's my challenge to you. I hope you guys have a great day. God bless, and we'll see you next time.